More sports talk worldwide with some news from the world of boxing. So y'all know what time it is. You ain't in a rush to get concussed. So, I'm going to let this sun, you see his brother's sun all up in here. You know what I mean? Let it happen. When we got it, got to enjoy it. Listen up. Got a good fight. I've been talking about it for a couple of years now. And it's the Mexican dust-up, the Mexican-American dust-up between Andy Ruiz Jr., former champion Andy Ruiz Jr., who's 33-2 between 2 KOs, versus Chris Arreola, the Nightmare, baby, with 38-6 with 33 KOs. Now, this fight, for the reason, it's 2 Mexican heavyweights that are both very good in their prime. You could say Chris Arreola, you can at least call him a very good heavyweight, right? Can't probably say great, but damn sure very good heavyweight, versus Andy Ruiz Jr., who we can definitely say, as once you become champion, you got to get a very good in front of it. You ain't going to say great yet, right? Andy Ruiz Jr. still has the possibility to become great, but damn good heavyweights. That's why I think it was a good dust-up the whole time. It's a good fight now, and it was a good fight 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever, or even 4 years ago. It's a good fight. But the problem right now is it's a pay-per-view fight. It's what I'm hearing. It's supposed to be on April the 24th, pay-per-view. I don't think it's pay-per-view worthy. Right? We got one guy with 6 losses, Chris Arreola, and a draw, and Andy Ruiz coming off of his fight with Anthony Joshua, where he came back and he was disturbingly fat, and we know that's the reason he didn't win. So I don't think that it's deserving. I don't know what would even make them think that this should be pay-per-view. It's not good. I've seen these kind of pay-per-views in England with Chisora with 9 losses and Dillian White and stuff like that. You think, well, damn, England, But you think England is a small market. It's they'll have other sports to compete with other than soccer. So you think, okay, England getting away with that. But that's Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Chris Arreola should not be pay-per-view. It should just be for whole America to just enjoy, right? But okay, whatever. Let's see if that works out. That's the only negative I have here. When it comes to Andy Ruiz Jr., he's the first Mexican heavyweight champion. Right? First Mexican heavyweight champion. Has that win over Anthony Joshua, which is his biggest win. Now, Andy Ruiz Jr., his second biggest win, I don't know, right? Because we got to remember he lost to Joseph Parker in a close fight. But his next biggest win, I don't know what you would call his next biggest win, because you wouldn't say Dimitrenko, would you? Right? And then I really can't tell you what I think is his next biggest win. Right? But after Joshua, maybe Derenchenko or something like that. I don't really know. I don't want to go all the way back to Sergei Lyokovich, because if I say him, at one time he fought him, I think Sergei Lyokovich had about 5 losses. We don't want to say that's his best win, because he had a unanimous decision win over Sergei Lyokovich, and that's the guy that Deontay Wilder knocked out and had doing convulsions. So when Deontay Wilder beats him, he's a bum. So I don't want to call this bum guy, who people are saying is a bum, his second best win, and he only beat him by a unanimous decision. So to me, none of them are bums. But I'm just saying his wins, it's not really super significant, even though people know that he's awesome. Bottom line is, Andy Ruiz Jr. got some work to do to get back to where he is. I've been hearing that he's fit again, but I ain't going for the okie doke. Last time we had some pictures and Photoshop pictures last time when he was before the second Anthony Joshua fight. He was supposed to be so fit and then came in there fatter than he ever been before. So I don't really know about that. Another thing about Andy Ruiz Jr. is I'm a little disappointed is after his fight with Anthony Joshua, he got rid of his trainer, which is no issue, right? A lot of people get rid of their trainers after a loss. A lot of them. Deontay Wilder just now, Daniel Dubois after a loss, and those are just 2 that stick out, right? And Andy Ruiz Jr. But Andy Ruiz Jr. wasn't disciplined himself. I don't think I would have got rid of my trainer if I was at the gym waiting on my trainer and he wasn't there, right? And he had me standing me up all the time. That's the difference. But I'm pretty sure his trainer, Robles, I think his name was, he was there, and he couldn't get Andy Ruiz Jr. to get there, right? And just because of that alone, for being with him the whole time, and I was trying to get you there, and you weren't disciplined after your first win with Anthony Joshua, then I didn't really like that scenario. But that doesn't mean I don't like the guy, because I roll with both of these guys. Andy Ruiz Jr. is a likable guy. I like him a lot. And the same thing with Chris Arreola for years, because Chris Arreola is just an honest guy. So Both of these guys had a layoff since 2019, right? And so, like a lot of fighters right now had 2020 off. It's just too much going on. So that's not a big thing. I think that it's going to be a good fight. And I think Andy Ruiz Jr. is the favorite here, obviously, because he's the younger fighter, period. Right? Now, let's go to Chris Arreola. Chris Arreola is also wanted to be the first Mexican heavyweight champion. He was close. He got in there messing with Vitaly Klitschko, and you don't mess with Vitaly Klitschko if your name's not Lennox Lewis, right? No one messed with Vitaly Klitschko. Nobody in that area, and Vladimir wouldn't have messed with him either. You can lose to Vitaly, or for you guys, or some Vitali, or whatever, but Vitaly Klitschko, that's what he called himself. Him, ain't nobody messing with him. So he had a loss against him. Then he had a loss with a Poland guy. What I told y'all, the Poland guy came from light heavyweight and came up there, and that's Thomas Adamic, Chesh Adamic. Adamic is very skillful guy, and he lost, I think, a unanimous decision to Adamic. And then, so he had his next chance. That was two chances. Adamic wasn't a title fighter, if I'm not mistaken, but he had another chance against Bermain Stavern twice, and that didn't work out either. That's when Stavern was at his peak, and he stopped Arreola twice. So he's had his chance to be the first Mexican heavyweight, and he was really going for it. It didn't happen for him. He turned into a little bit over a journeyman. But let me make sure this clear. Even between those losses, we had a guy called Seth Mitchell a few years back, about 5, 6 years ago. Seth Mitchell was a football player who changed and was boxing. I think it was 28-0. Was doing real well. And Chris Arreola, I'll never forget, Chris Arreola was like, listen, I'm going to have to let this guy know you can't just come into boxing and beat top echelon boxers. I'm going to let him know. And he went and did that. And then after he beat the hell out of Seth Mitchell, then I think he lost again to Bermain Stavern. So, but there was separation from normal guys. Chris Arreola is a good heavyweight, right? Period. And even in this advanced age, I'm going to say this, his last fight against Kanauki, who I just think, I was surprised Kanauki lost to Robert Helenius because I didn't think he could get hurt. But it's probably good that Kanauki can get hurt because one thing Kanauki doesn't have a problem with, that's letting his hands go, right? And I always think Kanauki is a problem from everywhere, from everybody, with that if he has a chin too, which I've seen him get hit a lot. It's some kind of way Robert Helenius got him. But the fight between Kanauki and Chris Arreola had the most punches thrown in heavyweight boxing history. They threw over 1,000, I think, apiece, right? So, that was just his last fight. He was about 38 years old then. He's going to be 40 by the time this fight comes around. So Chris Arreola and Andy Ruiz Jr. is going to probably be a good fight if they're both training. Now, what they both have in common is they both have discipline issues. That was the problem with Chris Arreola in his career. The whole time it was like, it's a little bit too big, a little bit too fat, couldn't keep the weight down between fights and things like that. And that's the difference between the very best, like we're just talking about the Klitschko's. You haven't seen any fat pictures of the Klitschko's, even after their careers. But in between, while their careers were going on, never. And people keep thinking, well, they were bigger. And no, it wasn't only bigger. It wasn't only more skilled. It was because we're disciplined between fights. That's the same thing with Mayweather. People thought Mayweather was running around throwing money in strip clubs to get people pissed off, but he probably jogged there and probably jogged home. You know what I mean? So those are the things, those disciplined fighters, Bernard Hopkins and the like, you're not going to see any fat pictures of them. They're always living a life. And both of these guys, Chris Arreola and Andy Ruiz Jr., have that in common that they're not. That's not what's up. But I got a feeling that for this fight right here, this is important. This is Mexican dust-up, Mexican-American dust-up. I got a feeling they're going to both be highly motivated for this fight, and we're going to have a pretty good fight, right? Because everybody's not going to do Chris Arreola like that, right? I don't want to keep mentioning, but I remember I seen Deontay Wilder beat Chris Arreola with one arm, right, when he tore his bicep and broke his hand. And I was always saying, because we always, get down on Deontay Wilder. Not we, but a lot of people. He ain't done this and he ain't done that. And I'm looking, well, I would like to see somebody else beat Arreola with one hand, right? I would like to see somebody else. Andy Ruiz is going to have two, and it's not going to be that easy. You're going to see. This is going to be a pretty good fight. I'm just thinking that Chris Arreola, he's probably going to be a little bit upset. I wasn't the first Mexican heavyweight to do this. and he's gonna be motivated to get down with Andy Ruiz Jr. I think it's gonna be a good damn fight. Let's see what happens. Shit, Vamanos, Doma Sports Talk worldwide, and I'm up out of here, y'all.